and to talk about a topic that is affecting all of us in cybersecurity. So Ian is the owner, founder, guru of all things tech. Ian Richardson from Doberman Technologies. And then we did get Dave to join us as well. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
I made it.
No introduction. He's here.
Hi, everybody. Yeah. Good to see everybody. I think Nick pretty much covered it as far as Ian goes. And Ian's been working with us for a little over a year now, I believe. I probably should have looked at that, but teaching us how to keep our data safe and which means keeping our clients' data safe at the same time. And he does a very good job of explaining things in a way that even I can understand. So not to put any pressure on you, Ian, but we're glad to have you. And you can
before we get started, if you want to ask a question, you can put that into the Q&A or into the chat box. And we've got some time at the end that Ian's going to be answering questions. So feel free to put those in as you have them, and we'll make sure we get your question answered. So.
All right. Well, let me go ahead and share out. Nick, Dave, can you see the slide deck on your screen?
Yep.
Good.
All right.
Yes.
So as Nick mentioned, as you have questions, throw them in the chat box. There's definitely time for those, and there's no out of bounds. So you got something you want to know, throw it out, and we will get answers. And the whole goal of this slide deck is to talk through protecting ourselves in the digital age. And so let's dive in. There'll be a quick little bit of introductions. I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about the quote-unquote cyber world in 2021. We will definitely talk through about what you can do right now. So you personally, everyone here on the call. And then at the end, we'll do a Q&A. So as you have questions, throw them out. We'll collect them all and we'll handle them at the end, just so that we don't go off the rails into rabbit holes and run out of time. So who's Doberman? We're a small business IT management company whose mission is to help our clients achieve their goals through our team. One thing to say off the top is we don't do individual service or things like that, residential support, but there are folks who I can connect you with. So if there are questions around that, throw them out there and I can get people connected. A little bit about us there. Moving on, who am I? I'm the guy who built the thing. So I founded it. I've been doing cybersecurity and compliance management for about 17 years now. And I was born and raised here in Lansing. And when I'm not at Doberman, I definitely love to travel. I like writing, photography, surfing, and hanging out with Carrie and Des. Obviously, global pandemic permitting on the travel stuff. So to start off, to set some expectations, I have one rule when it comes to talking with people, and that is no geek speak allowed. So you are not going to hear acronyms or nerd talk or lingo or any of that other stuff thrown around. I will absolutely try to go as simply as possible, following Albert Einstein's rule that if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. So no geek speak during this talk. So one of the key things to talk through is what's known in the industry as the CIA Triad. And CIA isn't like the Central Intelligence Agency. We're not talking about, the spooks here. It's about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And so I want to go ahead and define those cornerstones. So confidentiality is just around privacy. My information is my information. So my financial records are my financial records. My bank statements are my bank statements. My email is my email. And I only want to share those with whom I choose to share. So I might be sharing my data with Nick and Dave, but I don't want to share it with my neighbor, Bob. Integrity is around making sure that my data is what it is supposed to be. So my bank statement from January is not modified. My email are my emails without being changed or tweaked or modified in some way. That's all integrity means, is that your data can be trusted. It is what it was supposed to be. Availability is exactly that. I can use my data when I wanted to use it. These three aspects are the cornerstones that are used throughout small business IT cybersecurity, and they scale very well down to us. So you want to make sure that your personal information is secure, it's private. You only give access to the people you wanted to have access. You want to make sure that your personal information isn't modified in a way that that causes that data to no longer be useful or valid. And you want to make sure that you can access that personal information when you need to access it. So keeping these three things in goal should be your goal when it comes to protecting yourself, when it comes to establishing your own cybersecurity plan for Ian Richardson or Dave Shotwell or Nick Nauta, right? Like you need to have that personal plan of attack. The next piece is the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework. So NIST is a taxpayer-funded organization that helps American small business get a leg up. Anything that works for small business can work for you. So all the principles that a small business might use, and so this is defining this as someone who has 100 employees or less. Your local hardware store, your doctor's office, your financial advising company, anything that they're using to keep themselves safe, you can take those same principles, concepts, and procedures and use them in a more limited scope for your house. So my first challenge is start thinking about your household as a business. This is the business of your life. So you want to be making plans around that. So there's 5 stages to this. Identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. We're going to go through each of these in detail a little bit later. For right now, I want you to all think about, hey, my household is a business. I'm going to create a framework to protect it. And there's 5 columns. There's identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. If you're a fan of writing things down, go ahead and write these down. If anyone on the call wants like a copy of this slide deck or anything like that, just shoot out that you want that. Nick and Dave will get you a copy of it. I'm happy to share this out. So you don't have to worry about writing it down just to make sure frantically taking screenshots, right? We can make those available. Attacks are varied. This is a super geeky slide. We're not talking about what any of these mean. You don't have to worry about what any of these mean. I just want you to realize that on this slide, there are 16 different methods that people use to gain access to systems. 16 different methods here that people use to try to hack people, individuals, etc. At the crux of it, if you're thinking about, okay, well, there's all these different methods. What types of hacks are there? There's about 3 different types of hacks or hackers out there in the world today. Individuals, organized crime, nation states. Nation states we can kind of take out of our worry, right? China is not trying to hack you today. Nation states attack other nations. And the reason why they would go after a business is to attack a national government. We don't have to worry about them today. Individual actors in organized crime we have to worry about. An individual hacker is someone who would go online and buy a kit, and I'll show you a little example of that a little bit later today, and launch attacks against as many people as possible. And they're going to do that to try to make money. They're going to try to do that to monetize. Organized crime has groups of people in office buildings before COVID. They're probably all working remote now, who work in coordination to launch attacks to make money. If you think that, hey, there's not a lot of money in this, organized crime makes more money from cyber attacks, from hacking, than they do from all other areas of organized crime combined. So from sex trade, drugs, extortion, kidnapping, counterfeiting, all of that stuff, gaming, all that area, all of that combined makes less money than cybercrime for the mob these days. So this is their new thing. This is the new Capone. This is a little bit technical. Again, applying to small business, there was a vulnerability that came out last year that quite literally impacted every single business that used Windows Server in their environment. So almost all small businesses were impacted by this breach. And there's usually about 5 to 10 of these per year. Now, this one wouldn't have impacted you at home, but there are in general about 5 to 10 incidents that kind of bubbles up that could impact everyone on this call. A good one from a couple years back was Equifax. Equifax was a hack that impacted pretty much every adult American who had credit with Equifax. They're one of the big 3 credit reporting agencies. So if you had a credit card, you were impacted by this breach. So the point of this is that to kind of watch the news a little bit with a weather eye, this is the first thing that you can be doing, is be a little bit situationally aware. Don't watch so much that we're getting anxious or that we're staying up at night, but just be situationally aware. Hey, Target got hacked. So let's think about, okay, do I shop at Target? Yeah, all right. So I might want to watch my credit cards for the next couple of months. Do I have a Target.com account? Have I bought online? Well, yeah, I do. Okay, well, maybe I should log in and change my password. Was I using that password at Target.com for anything else? Well, yeah, it's also my Amazon password. Well, maybe I should change it there too. Think about what comes up in the news, how could it impact you, and how could you mitigate it? So start getting used to being situationally aware as to what's going on in the world, how does it impact me, how does it impact my house. So if you have a spouse, like with Carrie and I, if I notice, hey, Target got hacked, I'm going to go on and change all that stuff, but I'm also going to say, hey, Carrie, did you have a Target.com account too? Oh, you did? Hey, they got hacked. Why don't you log in and change the password? Did you reuse that password anywhere else? Oh, you used it for Amazon? Well, you should log in and change your password there too. So you need to start thinking in the second one about being the vanguard, being the tip of the spear for your household. Because if you did all the right steps and protected yourself, but your spouse or your child didn't and they were impacted, your world still shifts a little bit because of this. So be very, very cautious around thinking about how news stories might impact your world at home. So let's talk a little bit about things. One of the common things that people talk about is ransomware. What's ransomware? It's a piece of software that's malicious or bad. That's what it is. It's designed to block access to your computer by encrypting files. And what encrypting files means is it just means it changes the file. It puts like a password around it. And so when your files are encrypted by ransomware, you can't open them anymore. You try to double click on a photo, it says, hey, I can't open it. You try to double click on a Word document, it says, hey, I can't open it. If you get under the hood, all files are ones and zeros, like you see on the movie. Down at the base level, they're ones and zeros. What encryption's doing is it's changing zeros to ones and ones to zeros. That's kind of what it's doing. So it makes it so you can't read it without a decryptor tool. You have to decrypt the encryption. And what they're doing is they're encrypting everything on your computer, betting that you don't have backup, you don't have other copies, this is your only copy of your stuff. And if you want to be able to get your stuff back, you're going to have to give me money. It's not as easy as giving them a credit card or cutting them a check. You have to use something like a Bitcoin or some other type of weird cryptocurrency to get your stuff back. And I like to illustrate how complicated that is to help people kind of take it seriously. So we do what's called incident response. When someone has this happen in a business and they didn't have a plan, they call us and we come in and help them clean up the mess. We went into a manufacturer in the Lansing area who had everything, every single job file for their business was encrypted. So this is all their blueprints, all of their data, all of their quotes, all of their financial records, everything. This is the crux of their business. So for us, this would be like everything in your person got encrypted. So all your family photos, all of your emails, all of your spreadsheets, your tax data, all of your receipts, if you digitize them, everything was gone. And they didn't have backups because they blew the backups too. And so we went and I had to go to a seedy liquor store with $5,000 in cash to send what's called a MoneyGram to someone in Colombia to buy some of this weird cryptocurrency stuff. So I did that. So first off, I had to take $5,000 in cash to a not great part of town, give it to someone to send off this MoneyGram thing to a guy in Colombia. And then I had to hope and pray that he would send me some of this crypto stuff, which he did. And then we send this crypto stuff to the hacker. And then I have to hope and pray that they send us a decryptor, which they did. And then we had to run this, and we ran this in kind of a secure environment because it's a hacker, right? Like, I don't want to run another virus on the network. So we ran this decryptor. And you know what it did? They had about 200,000 pieces of files, and it unencrypted about 3,000 of them. When we reached out to the hacker, we said, hey, it only did 3. He's like, oh, well, you need another one. That'll be another $5,000, please. And so it kept on going. There's no honor in thieves. If there was honor with these people, they wouldn't do this. So these are dishonest, monetary-driven people who will absolutely try to take you for as much money as possible. So our goal is to avoid this in our life. It's pretty easy to get into the ransomware game. There are literally marketplaces. So that individual guy, that angry 16-year-old in the basement, that one-off, that Lone Ranger, can go online and spend $1 and get methods to steal credit cards. That little item that I talked about that impacted every single business last year, $3 or $2 to buy a kit that would let you take advantage of that. So $2 entry price to buy a little kit, a little software kit to take advantage of something that quite literally impacted every business with a server in America, every business with a server worldwide. It's very low barrier to entry to get into this. And they have a pay-as-you-go. Every time you have a successful hack, you pay a licensing fee off to someone. It's cottage industry. So you can calculate the cost of downtime, right? As we're not a business-focused audience here today, I'm not going to run through a downtime calculator. But if you think about the value of your time, there's a pretty simple exercise to think about the impact on your life, right? So in a typical incident, what I tell people is that it's going to take you 2 to 4 weeks to recover. And so when you come in, nothing's going to work. So imagine if 100% of your home computing didn't work and 100% of your data was gone. You're absolutely probably going to want to call your insurance company. You might be calling the police. You might be calling some different things, and that can take a couple of days for it to happen. And then you're going to have to try to restore some things from backup. So you might be calling your email provider. You might be calling your internet provider. You might be calling your friend's brother's cousin's nephew to come out and help you rebuild your computers. You might be calling your banks and calling Dave and Nick to like say, hey, do you have copies of some of my stuff, right? All of those calls and waiting for things are going to take days at a time. You'll have to rebuild your computers or go buy new ones. So either that's money or time or both. And then you have to reinstall your stuff on your computers and reach out to all those different people and try to compile back your life. So for 2 weeks, you might not have real good access to a lot of your stuff. How much time does it take you to kind of rebuild your life with that? Do you miss bill payments? Do you have impact on your ability to generate revenue for your house? Do you have, could there be correspondence that missed? Could this cost you revenue if you work for yourself? Could this impact your employer if you work for someone else and you're working from home? So kind of think about that 2 week of impact where none of your electronics work quite right. What's the value of your time? What's the potential revenue loss? And how much do you bill out per hour? How much do you get paid per hour? That's kind of a way you can calculate downtime at your home. And if you have a spouse that works, you can do the same for them. If you have children that are in school, what's the impact to their education, right? So you're kind of expanding into soft costs or non-monetary costs. But if your kid can't do their schoolwork for 2 weeks, and then you're having to pull late nights and weekends and stuff to catch them up while we rebuild from this, that's all costs of the downtime of your household because of this incident. So small business incident impact. More than half of small businesses in 2018 experienced some sort of breach, whether it was a minor breach or something that impacted them from a third party. 43% of attacks hit small businesses, so it was a plurality. Only 14% of people found that they were prepared for an attack, and the average cost to insurance was around $200,000. So this can all scale down to individuals, right? If you think about the average cost to a business being $200,000, the average hard cost to a business, which isn't on this slide, was about 45 grand in 2019. So they had to write checks or pay out $45,000 in mitigation costs. I find that for the individual, you're probably going to have 1/10 of the expense. So $4,500, a $4,500 check in hard costs, and $20,000 that you might have to be going towards insurance on. Now, your mileage may vary on that, but take this with a 1/10 type of approach. So $20K towards insurance, trying to get reimbursed, plus $4,500 check. That's some real money. I certainly don't want to have to pay that personally. Oh, there's the slide. 46,800. Small business, big risk. Average cost of downtime related to a ransomware attack is 46,800. So this is lost payroll, lost revenue, etc. So about $4,700 that we might have to write checks on. We want to try to avoid that whenever we can. And so what can we do? And I'm going to walk us through step by step on a lot of things. So if you are taking notes, here's where we're kind of getting to some meat and potatoes on items that we can do as a team. So think about our house, right? We all live somewhere, whether it's a house or a condo or an apartment. Maybe you're in an RV traveling the country. Up until a week ago, I was living out of a hotel room in Mexico. So you're living somewhere. Inside that somewhere, there's a lot of things we want to protect. We have our family. We have our pets. We have our photographs, whether hard copy or digital. We have our financial documents. We have our, memories and things like that that could be impacted by an incident. We have electronics. All of those things are valuable to us. And so the first thing is to think about, what do you have in your household that is digital, that could be impacted by a cybersecurity incident? So physical paper in a filing cabinet, hey, you know what? That's not going to be impacted by an incident. You can put that aside. But all of your electronics could be impacted, and anything that's on those electronics could be impacted. So try to make an inventory. It's the first thing we want to do. And so once we have that inventory, think about what you do at home. We have various things that we do to protect our house from, say, a burglar. We've got doors and windows, right? We can lock those. We can put locks on them. We could have an alarm system. We might have a dog. There's the police, neighborhood watch, right? You talk with your neighbors. You can carry insurance policies, cameras, a bat. Bunch of different things that we invest in to protect our house from that burglar. So there's a couple little commonalities here. If we look at these are kind of organized into similar types of areas in column form. And this first column, doors, locks, a fence, are examples of things we're doing to protect ourselves, right? This is protection mechanisms we put in our house to keep bad guys out. This next piece is really around detection. So we've got our front door, we lock our front door, they boot in the front door, or they break a window. Hey, the alarm or the motion sensor catches what's going on. That bad guy comes up and rings the doorbell to see if anyone's home. Well, that doorbell camera captures their face, right? It's motion activated, captures their face. The neighborhood watch might be watching our house while we're out of town and calling if anyone's kind of snooping around, right? This detects when there's a problem with our protection. When that alarm's going off and that dog runs around the corner or the police show up or, you know, baseball bat kind of comes out to play, this is the way that we respond to those detection events. So a logical sequence of protection, detecting when protection fails, and responding to that detected alarm are 3 out of the 5 areas of that NIST cybersecurity plan. We started off with identifying what was important in our house. We invested in as much protection as we thought necessary. You might have some detection items, a little bit of technology around detecting when our protection fails. We've got the ability to respond and then recovery. And this recovery, this identifying what's important, lets us know what was impacted, right? So in our analogy of the burglar, this might be your homeowner's insurance. This might be savings, right? This might be, I don't know, maybe you have a second house somewhere. You know, that's a valid strategy. In our example for cybersecurity, there's a lot of different things we can do here for ourselves. So I want to walk through piece by piece on what you might do. The first step, identify the things that are important to you. Identify the types of data you have in your world, where that data is stored, and how are you going to protect, detect, respond, recover if that data was impacted. So let's talk about that. What's important at home? Where is it stored? When does it get updated? So you might have, your financial plan, and that might get updated on an annual basis, right? Like, and that might live in a Word document or an Excel document. You might have your passwords. You might have all your passwords in a spreadsheet. You might have your will and estate plan and your trust and all of those trust documents. You might have your tax documents. What's important? Where is it stored? When does it get updated? If we think about that next column around things for protection, these are things you can do to protect yourself. First one is using what's called a passphrase. I want you to get out of the habit of using a password and start thinking about passphrases. And it's exactly as it sounds. It's just a phrase instead of a word for passwords. Nobody said you only had to use one word to log into stuff. So if something's important, think of a sentence you'll remember. It could be a quote out of a book. It could be 4 or 5 random words that you string together and repeat to yourself until you remember them. But you can think about that and have that phrase. And make it comply with all the security requirements. You can use book capitalization, so capitalize the first letter of each word in your phrase, and take a number and a symbol. All of us have numbers you remember really, really easily. My son was born on March 2nd, 2011, 03/02/2011. I'm going to remember that for forever. I remember my birthday. I remember the date that Carrie and I met. I remember anniversary days. I remember important days like when I graduated college, when my parents' birthdays, my brother's birthday, right? There's a lot of different important dates that you can remember. That's a number. Tack that number at the end or at the beginning of your passphrase. Then you can think about symbols. Easy symbols is I do the 2-digit date, the 2-digit month and the 2-digit year when I create a passphrase. So it is January 21. If you look at your keyboard, 0 is a parenthesis, 1 is the exclamation point, 2 is the @ sign, 1 is the exclamation point. So a passphrase I made in January of 21 would be parenthesis, exclamation point, @ sign, exclamation point. That's 4 symbols. You could even do 2 symbols. You could just do 01 for January. You could just do 1 symbol. Just do the exclamation point if you like, right? That's fine. Just come up with a symbol, put it at the other end of the passphrase. So you've got the number at the front, symbol goes at the back. You got the number at the back, symbol goes at the front. You have a phrase like, my name is Ian and I like cheese. There you go. Book capitalization, throw a symbol at the front, throw a number at the back. You've got something that is incredibly easy to remember, but incredibly difficult to hack. You can combine that passphrase with the concept of a password manager. There's a lot of them out there. I'm a pretty big vendor neutral guy. I don't promote products on webinars, so I'm not going to name names. There's a lot of password managers out there that are free for personal use. And if you search for password manager, a bunch of them will come up. There's a lot of them that are free for use. There's a lot of them that are maybe $100 a year. Use your passphrase to get into your password manager. Use the password manager to create 25 character strings of gobbledygook for everything else. And all your passwords go into there. And the reason why a password manager is nice is that if target.com got hacked, my random password in target.com was only there. I don't have to log into 20 different things and change my one password that I have. I use a different password for every different website. So you're not reusing passwords here. So your passphrase gets you into your password manager. Your password manager takes care of all the rest. Simple thing, a lot of us log into our computer as what's called an admin user. There's 2 types of users on your computer. There's an admin user, which is someone who can do everything. And then there's a normal user, which can't. Set up a second user account on your PC that's a normal user and use that normal user for all of your day-to-day activities. There's zero reason why on your computer you should have rights to do whatever you want. The way that ransomware stuff works is it relies on you having the ability or permissions to do stuff. A really simple way to prevent ransomware from running on your computer is if you accidentally clicked on something wrong, it's going to say, hey, enter an administrator password to install this stuff. And you say, I didn't mean to install anything, cancel. You just prevented an attack. So no admin rights on your normal day-to-day use. You should always have to enter a password to install or uninstall or do something on your computer. That's a good prompt. At home, your wireless, usually on a lot of wireless things for your home, you can set up what's called a guest wireless. Set that up, and anyone who comes to visit you, don't let them on your normal wireless. Make them use the guest wireless. It's fine to have that. But the guest wireless won't be able to talk to your computers. So if I came in and I accidentally, not even maliciously, I accidentally had a virus on my phone, it can't jump around all your stuff. Because I'm using your internet freely on my phone, I can use your internet, but I can't talk to like your PC from my phone or your PC from my PC. So use guest Wi-Fi. Change default passwords on devices. A lot of successful attacks at homes are folks who had like a default password on a smart TV or a default password on a thermostat, something easy, and there was some sort of vulnerability, some sort of hack with that device that made it easy for the hacker to log into your TV, and then they logged into your computer from your TV because it's all on a network. And that's where they were able to launch the hack from. So change passwords on everything. Don't use default passwords. Last protection thing you can do, make sure everything's up to date. Run those patches or whatever, the updates. Make sure all your stuff's up to date. 9 times out of 10, those updates are fixing security holes. It's an easy thing to do. Next, we're going to talk about detection. A free detection mechanism to see if your email has been involved in breaches. This is free. There's a website called Have I Been Pwned? P-O-N-E-D. P-O-W-N-E-D. Sorry, pwned. So P-owned. If you Google Have I Been Pwned, just as it's spelled here on the slide, take you to a website. You enter your email address, it's going to list out every single breach that your email is detected in. It's an easy way to get an idea of your exposure. I can vouch for this website. The gentleman behind it is a cybersecurity professional. He's running this as a service to people. He's doing this not to make money. He's doing this to try to help people be a little bit safer online. A really good guy. So go ahead and get an idea of your exposure. See what you might need to respond to. Anywhere where you can set up multi-factor authentication, that little thing that buzzes your cell phone that lets you know, hey, like you should, someone's trying to log into your bank or whatever, set up multi-factor wherever you can. Google and Microsoft have free ones. Follow the news. Again, hey, Target.com got hacked. Do you have a Target.com account? Well, you should probably log in and change your password. So follow the news. Read your emails. Don't react immediately. There is never a fire in a world of IT. Nothing that is so urgent would ever be sent via an email. You don't have to read that invoice right away. They're not going to shut off your account. The IRS doesn't email people around their taxes. Like 9 times out of 10, read the email with a critical eye. What are they trying to get you to do? What action are they trying to get you to take? A legitimate business will not tell you you need to open this attachment right away, or else we're going to shut down all your stuff or take all your money. They're not going to do that. So read the emails with a critical eye, look at who it's from, hover your mouse over things and make sure it's actually from the people you were expecting it to be from. But you can always pick up the phone and call someone and say, hey, I got this email. Is it legitimate? So kind of read those emails. And don't believe security pop-ups. Real security software doesn't pop up on your computer and say, hey, you have a virus. Click here to install an update to fix it. It doesn't happen that way. Your antivirus just removes the virus for you and informs you afterwards. It says, hey, I removed a virus. No action is required. So don't believe pop-ups that are cropping up on your computer saying like you are infected by these 20 pieces of malware. Click here to run a scan. That's not how it works. Responding, change passwords as needed. If something comes up in the news, something happens. If you're looking at the have I been pwned and hey, I'm involved in some breaches, we'll change those passwords as needed. Don't store passwords insecurely. Don't store them in your email. Don't store them in a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet. The sticky note under the keyboard, we're not going to comment on today. And adjust to current situations, adjust as needed. So again, as the news comes up, as you gain situational awareness, change things as needed. Last thing on recovery, insurance is one of the biggest things. You can get cyber insurance coverage. You can get kind of that coverage as an action item. Talk to your insurance agent as to what might be appropriate for you and your family. Backup, 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 backup. Backups are really, really, really important. If it's important to you and your family, you should have multiple copies of it. Look into maybe some cloud backup products for your computer. Look at backup around if you're using cloud applications or cloud storage for you and your family. Look at, are those backed up? Think about how you can protect that data. The last thing I always like to talk about is what's called a dead man switch. If you're using one of those password managers, a lot of them will have the ability that, hey, so I've got 500 passwords in my password manager. If I get hit by a bus, nobody knows what my password manager passphrase is. I've got a dead man switch to give Carrie access to my personal passwords and my business compatriots access to the business passwords. And all that is something that I log into once every 30 days to say, hey, I'm alive. I'm alive. Don't send this out, right? So there's a free one out there. If you Google dead man switch, there'll be things out there. There's free ones out there. There are paid ones where you pay $100 and you have access to it for life. They're really, really important, an important aspect for that kind of continuity in case the worst thing happens. You don't have to use an automated thing. Got a spouse? Share your passphrases with each other, right? So that you can each log into each other's password manager in case something happens, in case you're in an accident or the worst happens, right? You want to make sure your spouse, your significant other isn't locked out of that stuff. At this point, that kind of takes us to the end of the questions. Hopefully it wasn't too technical, and throw them out there in the chat. What can I answer? How can I help?
So Ian, we had a question from a client regarding phishing and robocalls and spamming. And his comment is everyone's at risk and everyone's in noise, but Congress seems paralyzed. Is there anything going on out there to maybe effectively combat this from like a legal and legislative standpoint? And can anything be done?
There's a couple of legal items. So first off, I'm not a lawyer, so none of this like standard disclaimer. I can't offer legal advice, but there's a couple of laws out there. One is called the Can Spam Act, and then there is the National Do Not Call List. And there are updates to both of those laws around email spam and especially trying to get cell phones and allow for cell phones, because the do not call list only works for landlines. So there are some updates to those laws. One of the most effective things is to call your state and congressmen. So call your senators. There's two of them. Call your local congressman. Call your state representative, and ask about that. You're going to be talking to an aide. Don't ask to talk to the actual rep. They're never going to get them on the phone, but they have people who work for them, and say, hey, like, this is important to me. What are things like, how can I be useful? You might be able to volunteer. You could talk about what the impact is. The people who speak up are the people who get listened to.
Right.
So think about reaching out to your representatives. There are from time to time petitions and signature drives around that. So you can look into petitions around that certain topic and dive into it. Those are two things. The third one is, like, elections have consequences, so vote and let people know why you're voting for them. The fourth aspect is to volunteer and get involved, right? So to call up your favorite politician, if that's not an oxymoron, and reach out to them and say, hey, I want to get involved. How can I get involved specifically around this? So those are the four things I would look into.
Yeah. My thoughts in general on that topic are these guys aren't following the laws anyway. So, it's always going to be a moving target. We can try to create a framework to make it more difficult, but they're probably not going to pay a lot of attention. Got another question. Just thanking us for the answer. One thing I was going to mention, Ian, and maybe you can elaborate on this a little bit, but under respond, as somebody who has some responsibility for people's money that could be affected by a breach, one of the things I would want people to do as a response, if you think your TD Ameritrade password's been compromised, call me and Nick and Jeff and Amy and just say, hey, keep an eye on my account. If you see anything weird, I'm worried that I got hacked and didn't change my password in time, or just make sure nothing happens. And I would say that probably your bankers and everyone else would appreciate that call too.
Yeah, so this is a good response. So say you get that email, it says, hey, I want like your passwords or whatever. You entered something, you come to that realization of, oh no, I made an oops. Think about, so the first thing to do is panic never serves a purpose. Okay, panic never serves a purpose. It doesn't help to get angry, doesn't help to get panicked. So write down, and I quite literally grab a sheet of paper, write down what happened, and then think about the impact. Take some time and think about the impact. Okay, what could this have done? Everything that you identify, kind of reach out to intentionally. So reach out to Dave and Nick and say, hey, I think something happened. Here's what it is, right? If you think your bank account might be blown, call your banker, call your bank and say, hey, I think something might be happening. Can we put some extra security on? If you think your credit card was compromised, call your credit card company. An easy thing, if you think like your social security number and some of that personal information could be compromised, there are 3 credit unions. There's TransUnion, Equifax, and what's the third one? Experian?
Experian.
Yeah. So there's 3 credit unions. A free service that they are federally required to do is, one, you're federally required to be allowed to get a credit report every year from each one of them. So you can do a credit report a trimester, so once every 4 months. So you pick one and grab it. look at your credit report and review it, but you can also call them and say to put a credit freeze on. And all this does is it makes
Right.
it a little bit longer and a lot more difficult to open a loan or a credit card in your name. So I don't know about anyone else, but very rarely am I in such a hurry that I have to go buy a car today.
Right.
Right? Like the dealer will wait. Even if they say they
Even if
won't,
they say they won't, right?
this deal's going to expire today. Well, then I'm going to go find a new dealer. I'm going to go buy a car somewhere else. All it means is you have to get on the phone and take some intentional steps to open up a new car loan or refinance your house. You can put your accounts on freeze. And there's like a short one, and then there's a more in-depth one. So you can opt out of all the credit offers, which will, one, cut down on your junk mail, but two, it makes it so that people can't routinely pull your credit report so much. But if you do a freeze, it locks you down. Like you are not going to be able to open a loan or take out a credit card or something of that nature without some extra steps. And that's a really good way to respond to a potential identity theft item.
Good. Good. Okay. Any more questions in the Q&A? I don't see any.
It looks like, is it safe to store passwords on an iPhone?
No is the short answer. And so the same thing in like, so if you're using like Internet Explorer, or Microsoft Edge, or Google Chrome or whatever, and it'll say, hey, do you want to store your password? There are readily made exploits, and an exploit is just, it's like a hack that people can use to compromise where those passwords are stored. So without getting too complicated, all those passwords are stored in what's called a database, which is like a big spreadsheet on whatever device, right? So if you're storing them in Chrome, there's a database in Chrome of all those usernames and passwords. There are ways where I can trick you either on an iPhone or an Android or on your Windows or Mac laptop or desktop that'll read that database and send it off to me. So it's not a good idea to use the built-in ones. They're not secure enough yet. The phone companies are a little bit further along than the browsers, but there's well-documented exploits on how to do that. That's one of the most common ways to get that is if I'm trying to trick you, I'm going to try to trick you so that I can read that database because that'll give me all the information I need to know. So,
well, you know, I was a little skeptical of using a password manager, but we started that on the company level last year when we started working with you, and it has actually made the whole password situation much less stressful. I really just have to remember how to log into my password manager. And then from there, when I'm logging into a website, I just click on the password manager's icon and it will fill in the blanks for me and maintain those passwords. So I don't have to remember all the weird gobbledygook.
yeah,
So,
it really, really does help make things easier. There's a lot of HR benefits to a business around that. But if you think about like your family, right, your family unit, there's some quote unquote HR benefits there, right? So if you and your if you and your significant other share a password manager login, right, you can all log in the passwords and then you can be able to log in and out of accounts to help each other out, right? Like, hey, can you get on Amazon and put in the Amazon Now order or whatever for the groceries, right? Well, it's one big gobbledygook password. It's shared between the two of you. You just log in and use the password manager to do it. So it can make your life a little bit easier to go back and forth with that. You can kind of share some things out. And there are absolutely password managers designed around families so that if you need to have some separate accounts for whatever reason, and there's a lot of reasons to do that, you can do that, but then you can have shared or family accounts, collaborative accounts. So look into that. Usually those are paid for. They're not usually free, but a lot of the times those password managers, a lot of the times those password managers are like $99 a year or $199 a year, right? So it's pretty affordable.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for saving a buck or two, but that's pretty cheap insurance.
Right.
You know, if we back up a few slides in here to the kind of damage that can be done. And I mean, just the way, you know, the stress around keeping your passwords up to date and remembering them all is probably worth $99 a year.
Yeah.
So
Well, and you know, the thing that I've always that's resonated with me over time is that, you know, something given away usually has no value, right? Like if it's being given away for free, there's a reason. Everybody's out, like everybody on this call understands the value of finances and money, right? And so it's one of those things where it's how much is your family worth to you? Is it worth $100 a year to make it that much easier and to invest in some protection? I'll pay that all day and twice on Sunday to help out.
Yeah.
I saw that there was an attendee that was mentioning around password storage on the Mac that's called Keyfile or Keychain, not Keyfile, Keychain on Mac. Yes, Keychain can get compromised, that internal password storage manager on Mac. There are plenty of compromises. In fact, the most common compromise to hit Macs is to try to compromise Keychain. So storing things in the Keychain is not necessarily like, go ahead and use it, but I wouldn't use it for website type stuff. It's fine to use it around storing things on your, like for your applications on your Mac. Go ahead and use Keychain to make your life a little bit easier, but I would not be using that to store passwords around websites and stuff. That's not the way that's not the way personally I would function. So.
Good.
So.
Any other questions out there? I'm going to ask one thing, and there may not be a short answer to this, so if there isn't, just punt. But you mentioned changing your user login on, say, your Windows computer away from admin. You just do that under your personal settings, and
Yep. So you know, it's this is the magic of Google. You could Google how to make a non-admin user in Windows, and it'll walk you through it. When you do this, you'll want to kind of set it up so that your email's set up under the new account, etc. Right? Because you've been used to using an administrative user. If you have a really, really tech savvy friend, if you're more technically non-inclined, a tech savvy friend, maybe that tech person at church, a child is usually good at doing this type of stuff. Just let them know what the objective is, but it does take a little bit of time and investment, but it's one of the single most effective things you can do to limit it, because almost every attack relies on the ability to do something. So if you don't have permissions to install software through your user, if I can't install software as the user, I couldn't install. I couldn't install the. I couldn't install the virus on your machine. I couldn't run the virus on the machine. I saw a request for suggestions. I don't advocate vendors ever on calls. So like my info's up there. If you want to follow up with me and stuff like that, I would do that. There's some pretty strict things around, like, that's a line I usually don't cross on a publicly broadcast thing, right? So
Nick and I are happy to talk to anybody that asks about what we've been using, what our experience has been. So just let us know. I think that's fair. Do we have any other questions coming in? I don't see any.
Yeah, I can say one thing about the password manager. I'm not a fan of ones that are applications on PCs or apps on phones. I like the ones that are web-based. So it's a website based. I don't like something that relies on being installed on a computer or phone. I like it when it's web based. So that's a key piece to consider. And if you're using a password manager, you should combine it with multi-factor authentication, so that if your passphrase for your password manager gets blown, they would have to also have your cell phone to be able to log in as you.
Yeah.
Big fan of that.
Is there a difference, Ian, between cell phone authentication and like the apps that you can get? Is there any significant reason to do one over the other?
Yeah. So with And generally, this is from a business standpoint. For a personal user, not really. Like getting the text message versus an app, it's whichever you like the best. From a business standpoint, when you use an app, it gives you centralized control. So you want to be able to have visibility as to who has the app installed where and how to centrally manage. So usually there's business concerns. For the household. If you're just going to use it, just choose one and use it reliably. So there's some free ones from Microsoft and Google out there. There's a variety of other ones, but Microsoft and Google are pretty big companies. Despite what anyone's view is on there, they're both not going anywhere. So I feel relatively safe mentioning them versus a smaller or a third-party company that might be here today and gone tomorrow. It's one of the reasons I don't like to throw vendor names around.
Fair enough. I think we are at about time, and I don't see any other questions. So I know I learned some things. I got my notes down here. Every time Ian comes and talks with us, I learn something.
Yeah. Yep.
If you're looking for more, we did a podcast with Ian similar to this that might have some other insight for you too. So check out our website. It should be up shortly.
And we will be posting this recording probably next week when we get it cleaned up, along with some of the resources, the slides, and as always, reach out with your questions. If you think of something later, we can always pass it on to Ian. I won't just make up an answer, I promise. Yeah, I guess that'll do it. So,
my email's on there too. Yeah, if people have questions on a cybersecurity basis, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer them. I'm happy to try to help out wherever I am. And if you're on there, connect with me on LinkedIn.
Great.
So.
Thanks, Ian. Always a pleasure.
Yep. Hey, thanks, guys. Really appreciate the time to come and spend some time and chat. So
yeah,
stay safe out there.
Yep.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.